Okay, so we're live. Welcome back. We have our second parallel session, our community spotlight, and this session is perspectives on arts and well-being with carers in Moray and people living with dementia around the Western Isles. So, to begin with, again, similar format. We're going to have 15-minute presentations from Green Tree Arts and then Deepness, and then we've got about 15 minutes for questions and Q&A and discussion. So, to begin with, we have Green Tree Arts with Nicole Kennel and Deborah Hart. Again, I've had the amazing opportunity to visit you, Moray, whilst you're doing one of your activities. It is incredibly enriching. I'm going to hand over and enjoy your...
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay at the back? Yep. Perfect. Nice to see you all today, and we're going to give you a really quick snapshot overview of our project, mainly focusing on the processes we use, really, the different tools, because we thought that might be a really helpful way of showing how our community-led research really was as effective as we wanted it to be, and the way we use creativity as part of that. So we'll hotch between the two of us, and hopefully there'll be time for questions later on as well. Here we go. So our co-researcher team was myself and a team of 4 carers from Moray originally. And we had some online sessions together through COVID using art online. And when these sessions came to an end, we were all really disappointed, actually. And we really thought, hang on, this was really good. And we were really benefiting from this. We were really enjoying what we were doing. And yeah, really determined that this should carry on. So we got together at a later stage. We kept in touch. And we made the decision that when the Ideas Fund opportunity came up, this was something we would like to look into. And actually was something we could maybe create together. So by pure chance, we were able to connect with a researcher from UHI, Anya Zubala, who had a real interest in arts and nature and thinking about how we could combine those together. So we started off meeting for some focus sessions, really thinking about what it was we wanted to do. But then the second phase of the project led us to kind of open up to the wider community, to more carers within Moray, and also generally people within Moray that had an interest in arts and nature, and maybe thinking about how that might work together. And we looked at both online and also face-to-face opportunities. So we did some sessions online first, and then we moved into meeting together outdoors as well, which was really a different experience again. And then finally, our third phase, which we won't have time to tell you all about today, was actually expanding across into the Highland region, where we then invited different members from different communities who were maybe working within community projects with art or nature. And that was using kind of nature and art in quite a creative way. So that could be something as broad as gardening, which we feel is quite a creative activity in itself. So it didn't specifically have to be about art. It was about creativity, and that's one of our learning points we found throughout the project. So we extended across, and we managed to recruit another group of researchers, and we all worked together over the course of nearly 2 years. So I'm going to hand over to Deborah, who's going to tell you a bit more.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. Hi, so I'm Deborah, and I was one of the co-researchers on the project. I have sort of my own art practice, but I'm also really interested in nature as well, and research around about well-being and how both art and nature can help with well-being. And yeah, I'm not sure if you said already, but we were really interested. There's a lot of research about art and how it can help well-being and how nature can help well-being, but bringing the two together, we were really interested in how that would affect us as a group. So the first group that came together of carers came up with these questions that we were going to be asking ourselves throughout our research. But overall, the question was, how does it affect us? How does it affect our own well-being? So we were acting as like co-researchers and participants as well, which was a challenging role. Or I found it quite challenging to have that hat on of being somebody just participating, but also taking a step back and reflecting on what we were doing. And this just shows the approach that we took, that I think you've talked a wee bit about, Nicola. So there was the first group of co-researchers, of carers, and then the second group was where I got involved. It was an extended group of people who are basically just interested in research. to do with well-being, and then expanding out into the wider community. And in between the two, the last two loops there, we had a session where we went out into the community, and we had an event where people came along and shared the experience that we had had so far. And I think there's a wee bit more about that later on.
Throughout the project, we really tapped into as many different creative mediums as we could to really experience what we wanted to share. And I suppose this, in essence, was our data and the tools we were using to collect our data. And that was the bit that I think was quite an eye-opener and quite inspiring for us as a group, because actually we felt maybe we weren't researchers, and it was with the support of our researcher Anya who was able to show us that actually, you know, we could choose our own ways of communicating. It was our experience that was important and what we thought and how we wanted to express it. So that was the way. We all had different interests, we had different skill sets. Some of us were interested in art, but maybe actually didn't feel particularly skilled at using it. So actually the whole experience, like Deborah said, of being a participant, but also a co-researcher, was all sinking in at the same time. And it was challenging at times, but it was also really inspiring, because what came out of that throughout all the phases we worked in was the connection with one another, and actually how working together and supporting each other allowed that research to develop, allowed our confidence to develop, and we'll come on to some of the impacts a little bit more. So filmmaking was one of the things that we got really involved in, and we had a filmmaker come along, and he really just took the lead from us, really, didn't he, in terms of what we did.
Yeah, this was really interesting because we were using different technology to record what we were feeling and seeing and sensing when we were in a particular environment. And this, we did it at Blair's Loch. We had that experience at Blair's Loch, but also at, what was the beach we were at again? Cummingston Beach as well. And it was really interesting because it was quite mindful in terms of, like, you know, just taking your time and walking in the sand and hearing the crunch of the sand. And at Cummingston there's lots of rocks. I don't know if any of you are aware of Cummingston Beach. And when you listen to it, you hear the rocks rolling in the ocean and stuff. So it was a very, we all got together, but we all had our own wee sort of separate sessions where we took off and did our own thing and then came back together again. So that was really interesting to see how using technology could help us deepen our connection. And then this was us using words. This was some of the words that we came up with and comments that people came up with after sessions. So we would have some words at the beginning of a session, and then we'd do the same at the end of the session. And it was really interesting to compare what was said at the beginning and the end, and how that all came together for us, and how we felt after the session. This is one of our sessions. This is Blair's Loch in Cummingston. And then this is the Padlet. Do you want to say a bit about that now?
Lewis had, through one of the community practice sessions we went to, had introduced us to the Padlet, which was actually a really useful tool. It was one that some of us were a bit resistant to using initially, and technically found quite difficult to use, but we stuck with it, and actually it became a really helpful thing in between sessions to be able to share what we were doing independently, whether we were engaging with nature by ourselves or with our families, and being able to put reflections and thoughts. So that really contributed to some of the learning and some of the things that we wanted to consider our themes that we were discovering. And it's a really nice way of keeping in touch with one another as well, and that sense of community between ourselves.
Particularly when we were doing our online sessions, and then because we would have words that we would consider in between sessions, and then we would go out into nature ourselves, or we'd create our own artwork, and then we'd post it, so it helped us maintain that connection between the online sessions. And this was a journal, so we journaled as well. So we each had a journal and had the opportunity, if we wanted to, collect bits in our journal, draw, take photographs, put them in the journal, just to record what we were experiencing as we went along. And we also had these accordion books that we used to gather information. And when we were having our online sessions, we would use a page of them and maybe create some artwork while we were on our online sessions, and then we recorded what our experiences were. I think everybody used them a bit differently, didn't they? Some did it online, and then some did it when they were out and doing their own sort of art. Yeah. Oh, and this was some sessions that we had outside at Blair's Loch, where we were creating a spiral out of stones. So we had sort of stone-shaped paper, and we were creating our experiences and creating a spiral. And we did some, what's that called again? Cyanotype. We did some cyanotype too. Okay.
That's it. And that part with the pebbles actually was a group exercise together, and that was us when we joined with our researcher to have our main reflective session, and that was a really key session in the project, wasn't it? Because it was really where we started to think, well, how are we going to share what we've learnt with other people, and how can we kind of widen that reach within the community? And that's where our idea to come up with our event came up, and actually how we would use an exhibition space as our kind of data sharing environment. And we kind of used our photos, our artwork, and then we wanted to invite people along, obviously to see what we had done and for us to be able to share, but we also wanted them to participate and also to share their own perception of what we had done, but also for them to give their own experience as well. So that was I think it was a really meaningful event, and I think we really, I think we got,
thought it was going to be, wasn't it?
and we got such a lot from it as co-researchers, as individuals, but also the participants that came along. I think that was what really struck us, and when we reflected and we had our kind of reflection session afterwards, the amount of energy and commitment people put into taking part in the event, and these were people maybe that hadn't used art before, or maybe didn't feel particularly comfortable in a group setting. It was something quite different, but everybody really, really took time and energy and stayed much longer than we thought. We thought people would just nip in and nip out, and actually people were there for a good couple of hours. And we had questionnaires which we'd devised as a group, and people completed those, and there was lots of sort of tick boxes for quick answers, but also asking questions based on our own questions that we'd asked ourselves, and people took time to do that as well, and that gave us some really rich material to go away and look at, which again, as a group, our co-researchers started to, with the support of Anya, to look at that. So, and this was part of our reflection time and discussions. And this was some photos from the event before our visitors. And some of the interactive things. Deborah, do you want to say? Because you created.
Yeah, this was just some interactive tools that we used to help people engage with nature and also with their art making, because some people were a bit not sure to get involved with the art. So we had prompts and interactive tools to enable people to feel more comfortable with that. And there was people, it was quite nice because some people were saying, oh, I've not done this in years and I used to like art, but then, people commented on it and it wasn't favourable, so I've never done that since. So, and they were starting to do that again, so that was quite nice, yeah. And this was, we did an assessment on what was most successful when we were using the tools that we used, what people found to be more successful. And you can see there that group discussion and individual discussions was probably the key thing. So apart from everything else and all the other tools that we used, actually meeting up together and having that opportunity to discuss things with one another was one of the most important things. I think the Padlet was perhaps the least favourable, wasn't it? For many anyway. And this was what we learned about our research. It really was a space for personal growth, having ownership. We all felt like we all owned it and we were all part of what we were doing. And a sense of belonging. And really key was the generosity and participation, because people were given of their spare time to come along and be involved. But everybody, because they could see the value in it and the effects it was having on their own well-being, they continued to do it. So that was really appreciated. Yeah, and structure was really good. It was very structured. We had Anya there in terms of the structure, and Nicola as well, giving us a structure around about what we were doing. But at the same time, there was the freedom to explore things and be open about what we were looking at. And that was really helpful and really enjoyable for everybody as well. That seemed to help us develop the project in the right direction. And then celebrating the journey and sharing with others, obviously that was a really important part of our experience, and being able to extend that into the wider community. Yeah, that's one of the main quotes. Stay as open-minded as you can, afford yourself the time and space for reflection, both individually and collectively. And I think that was key to the role of being a co-researcher in the project, yeah.
I think we both said at times it certainly felt quite overwhelming. I think when we got to the stage of reflecting on everything we'd done and gathered, we were quite amazed at actually how much material there was, and at that point it did feel like, well, how do we capture this? And we went on to do a project findings report, which we'd love to share with people, so please, we'll leave details of how you can get in touch, and we've got PDF copies. But we also, as part of our sort of rounding off the project, we created a project book, which was each co-researcher sharing their own experience of taking part in the project, and really just sort of reflecting on what they hope others might get from it. And we've got copies of those books, which we really want to now be able to share with people and communities, and hopefully inspire others, both individuals and communities, groups, to be able to access if people are thinking that they maybe would be interested to find out more.
The Art and Nature Connections book is an invitation to reflect, be present, to find comfort and inspiration in the artistry of the world around us. To our co-researchers, it's a testament to the beauty, personal growth and healing captured in their exploration of creativity, nature, and the relationship we found between them.
So that's just a little snapshot. Hopefully you think, oh, I'd like to see a bit more of that. Oh, I'd like to read that book. So please just get in touch if you'd like to. And I think there's some other resources as well, which we'll leave details of. So if anyone would like to find out more, we've got loads more we'd love to share. And a project film as well, which we're really proud of that. And I think really captures the essence of the project and the time and the commitment and, yeah, all the amazing work of our co-researchers. So thank you. Okay.
We're going to introduce Ron and Karen Taylor, famously, and Ron Coleman.
Should we just start? Because we're short of time, aren't we? Okay. So, as you heard, I'm Karen and I'm married to him. And you? Who are you?
I'm married to you.
Yeah. And it, okay. We've actually sort of been working together for 22 years. Most of our work was in recovery from psychosis. So we come very much from a place of putting the peer first. And that I think was probably really helpful when we started this project. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a plotted history, if you like, a potted history, in fact, of where we got to the Incubator Fund, and then Ron's going to take over after that. I also just want to mention our amazing, beautiful researcher, Kirsten Broadfoot, who's not with us today. She was very much part of what we did. And I feels like she's a real part of our family now. So I'm going to take you back to 2018. And Ron basically was being diagnosed with cognitive impairment at that point. And to put it bluntly, his head was up his arse. And as one of our expressions that we often use when we were doing our previous work, I told him he needed to unplug his head, because all he could see was shite, and that if his head came out, then maybe he would see other things. I was being as polite as I possibly could in the way that I said that, but anyway. And he did. One of the first things he started to do was write this incredible poetry. And that was, it was beautiful. And then we got introduced to Atlanta, which is our art centre on the island. And we met somebody called Paula Brown. And she suggested we went to a meeting in Aberdeen, where we would meet other people, family members and people with lived experience of cognitive impairment and dementia. So we did that. And Ron met a woman called Agnes Houston, who basically changed from us to what's happening now, in that she was a dementia activist, a person with dementia was out there fighting for better things. And Ron's been doing that all his life, but he never thought, at that point, he hadn't thought he could do it in dementia. And suddenly realised, shit, I can carry on doing exactly what I've always done, but in the dementia world. And so he started, and now he's just not unstoppable now. That then led to him showing his poetry to a worker at Atlanta who said, and he thought, oh, maybe this will make an installation or something. And the guy challenged, said, go away and write a play. So he did. He went away and wrote a play called Caught in the Moment of Time. I'm incredibly, spirals mean everything to me. And my first career, or my first hope of a career, was to become an actress. It didn't happen. I was a musical theatre bod, and anyway, various reasons it didn't happen. But here I am now at that time in my 50s, late 50s, starting to act again. So I played Alexa on stage in this Caught the Moment time at Atlanta. It was bloody amazing. Sang, did all sorts of stuff. From that, we had this idea about starting up a group on the island for people with cognitive impairment and dementia. And for about a few weeks, we sat on our own, basically, in Stornoway, thinking, is this going to be worth it? But slowly, at first 2 family members came along, because the group was of family members and people who lived at Spirits. And then we built up to a group of about 12 people. Winding back, one of the first things we did was set up a dementia radio station as well. So for anybody who's interested, look up Deep Nest Dementia Radio. You can get us through Amazon and all kinds of places. And we don't play Glenn Miller or war songs. We play rock, punk, whatever. Because actually, if you think about it, our generation were punks. You know, so I'll take you forward again. So we did this play. We then got tour money, took it to the Shetlands, to the Orkneys, all over the place. And then, I'm just trying to think what happened next. Yeah, I think we came across the idea funding thing and thought, wow, this would be great for our group. What could we do? Whatever. Started to put together an idea because of what had happened to Ron was, could creativity and art help people with cognitive impairment and dementia to create new neural pathways, to stay well, etc., etc. And we found Kirsten, and we were given incubator money, I believe it's called, isn't it, to start looking at projects. So we started this, and then Ron went to, well, we don't quite know what happened, but he stood on a nail, and or a little screw, and this went into the bottom of his foot, and it went gangrenous. And that was a process that took place actually inside a hospital. We won't go any further about that, but anyway, it did. And he was transferred over to Inverness to basically have half-leg amputation. He was in the middle of writing, you got through the incubator period then, hadn't you? No, that was the incubator period, or you got through the incubator period. I'm just trying to think. You got through, and he was in the middle of writing the big research project that it was going to do, which in our heads at that time was quite small. But if you can imagine it in hospital, just having his leg amputated on morphine-type substitute, the ideas were growing and flowing, and we ended up with this bloody huge project. And at this point, I'm going to take over Ron. Can we have the film going on in the background if you've got it? Because I think it's really, it's just trying to get it. Okay. So, you've got a mic, haven't you? So you can go on now.
Yeah, so I worked with Kirsten, and it was great because Kirsten visited me in the hospital, and we would write the bid while we were there. And it is right, and I would recommend to anybody, if you're writing a bid, go on morphine. It really expands your thinking. And so by the time I finished, we had moved from having a wee festival on the island to having the first Scottish Dementia Arts Festival, which we did last year. And it was a great success. And I'm going to start by reading A Dementia Festival Was Born. And we watched as directors danced poetry in motion, and the members painted, sculpted and drew, and installations were made, and the children played, and the members sang and took photos. Boys will be boys as they contrive new conversations, and how everyone laughed. And weavers weaved a tapestry of tales. Songs were sung, stories were told, films were made, and women renewed our community's divine splendour. and crafty crofters created crafted delights one more time, and a dementia festival was born. So that was our beginnings. For us, it was a journey. And for me, it's been both a personal journey and a journey that has led me down new pathways. Before I had a cognitive impairment, my involvement in the arts could be summed up in the word nil. I did nothing in the arts, never had done. Was told when I was in primary school that I was crap at art, and I believed the teacher. Okay, I was then given a diagnosis of vascular dementia, and that's what I now live with. And our question really was, can the arts keep me in a place where I can die in my own bed? Now, we dressed it up in different language, but that was the bottom line, because none of us want to go into a care home. And we saw in COVID what happened to my community, and I'm talking about the dementia community, because of decisions made at policy level in government and in health boards to put a whole load of us out of hospital and into care homes, where the highest group of deaths were amongst people with dementia. So, did I trust the government? Did I trust the systems? No. What I did trust, though, was my partner and the group I was in. I trusted them. And we worked towards thinking about how would we make a dementia festival. And the first line of the poem reads, "And directors danced." And when I came to after this thing, I went online as you do to look at everything about it. And I found these dancers in wheelchairs. And I said to the staff in the hospital, I'm going to do that. And of course, that's the kind of thing everybody says. But at the festival, which was held here in Inverness last year, I danced in a wheelchair. And that was a special moment for me, because what it said is, it doesn't matter what your disability is, whether it's dementia or you can't walk or whatever. The thing is, you can find something that makes life worth it. And we believe in things that are happening that suggest that our assertion that people with dementia will survive in their communities much longer if they're involved in the arts is true. Since then, we've done, we created an album of songs where the songs were written by people with dementia. And okay, never work with animals or your wife, right? Just bad news, okay? Yeah, we put together an album where people with dementia wrote the lyrics and in some cases performed. And we thought that was important, because there's loads of projects where they get people with dementia and they get them to put a few words together, and then they get some professional musicians to sing it for them. That to me is only half the journey. The real journey is in the performance. And we believe also now that performance in itself is a way of disseminating our journey. So when we perform, we're actually not just performing a play or something like that, but we're actually telling our own stories in that performance. So in the dance, in song, in theatre, in poetry, we tell our stories. So for us, we saw that as a really important component. And because our researchers here, I can't give you all the stats and everything, because I'll tell you, to be honest, they bore me silly, right? They really do. And they bore her silly, because that's what we did. You know how we're trying to make us researchers? Well, we sort of turned it on its head, and our researcher danced in one of the dances. Our funder played at our music night at the festival. And anybody that was involved with us, we also got them involved in performance. Because that's what it was about. It was about us performing together. And when you're on stage and when you're performing, you've not got dementia. There is no dementia in the performance. There is yourself and that moment of time. And that's what was important, and that's what we enjoyed. And since then, we've had a blast. I started as I never had done anything in the arts. I've now written a play, which is good. I've also now finished writing a musical, which is going on tour over Scotland and has been funded by Creative Scotland. And people tell me, they don't talk to me about dementia. They talk to me about being a playwright and a writer and a poet. And I'll tell you, that's much nicer, because when you've got dementia, people don't even talk to you at all. They just ignore you. And that's why our big cry is we all are artists. Everybody's an artist. And if we live that, then we can change society. And we want to go on. My last piece of news, which I was telling Lewis about last night, is I'm about to start my PhD in January. And I don't know if I'll finish it, because you don't know with dementia. But I'm doing it by performance. So I'll be performing and looking at the impact of performance on people there. And I never thought I would go back to academia, because I hate it. I hated it when I was in it. And I now find myself going back on that journey.
Still singing and recording an album at this moment. And the arts are totally central to that group. And we don't have artists that come in and say, right, you're all going to do this. It's very different. We just have two artists, they alternate each week, they bring stuff in, and if people want to join in, they just join in. If they don't, they sit and chat. So there's no sort of pressure, oh, you're coming to an art group. Just art is just there if you want to do it. And you know, we've now joined up with groups. We with like Ullapool Group. Hopefully, we'll be joining up with a group in Moray for this year. We're running the Scottish Art Festival this year again. This time it's in Edinburgh, but we will be doing a day in Inverness. Where it'll be at the moment, not sure. And Stornoway, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure there's maybe a time for a bit of a reflection before we. So we've got a couple of minutes. Just to invite, I guess, so Nicola and Deborah as well. I guess the question I would ask for you is, if someone's at the beginning of their journey around community-led research, working with the arts, working with research, what's a piece of advice you might share with them? A bit of learning, and yeah, I'll come to you guys first.
I think it's very similar to what people were saying earlier. We very rarely bring the word of dementia or cognitive impairment up at our club. It's just a group of misfits. We call them, they are. They're real. And like many other places, we mainly get people that are incomers on the island. Still not sure what that's about, although it's changing. We've now got more and more people that are beginning to come who come from the island, if that makes sense. So not being explicit about what you're doing, letting it grow organically, I suppose.
Anything from you, Ron, in terms of reflections? And then I wonder, Nicola or Deborah, if you've got a last reflection just to add. Do you want to cover? It might be easier.
Just what you were just saying, really, I think the flexibility within the role, I think the fact that a lot of people involved in our project had huge responsibilities which put real pressures on time, but just to allow people to dip in and dip out, and that seemed to work really well. And that was both just in terms of time, as in maybe weeks not being involved, but then just dropping back into the project whenever they wanted to or had something they'd like to contribute. But also with the actual sessions, a bit like you were saying, no pressure to, if you just want to come along and have a cup of tea and chat, there's no expectation to make anything or be creative, or if you just want to listen, then that seemed to really help people stay engaged and want to be part of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Can we give a massive round of applause?